Welcome, everybody. This is Curtis with Campfire Tales, Cryptids of America. And joining me around the campfire tonight, as you can see, it's not nighttime, but anyhow, is Glen. Glen, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, Curtis. How you doing? I'm a Bigfoot experienced researcher, I would call. My main encounters happened in Arizona when I was younger, but I have had a couple this last year in Pennsylvania also.
Oh, really? So, do you do a lot of traveling, or is it
Not a lot. I used to live in the mountains of Arizona.
okay? And when you say mountains of Arizona, where's that?
In the Lakeside Pine Top area.
Okay, all right. Um, So before we get started, I'll remind everybody just go ahead and check out the merchandise page, and spend your money. That's what we like. But Glenn, let's get started. Okay,
All
go ahead
right.
and tell your story.
Okay, well, let me tell you about the first encounter I had when I was probably about 14 years old, 15 possibly. It was like October weather, a little chilly. I was at a party with a few of my friends, and my friend's girlfriend Peggy was heading home, so I figured I'd give her a walk. I'd walk her home because it's pretty dark around 2:30 in the morning around Arizona in the mountains.
Yes.
So I'm walking her home, going down Woodland Lake Road, and I got past this one particular house. The dogs had been barking at us before and attacked us. No, nothing happened that night, so I walked her home, dropped her off. She went in through her window. I came back, walked back out, and I'm heading back down the road. As I got close to that house, the dog started barking on the other side of the house. So I said, okay, I know these dogs. So I started crossing the road, and I got about halfway across the road and halfway past the house when the dogs just went silent. Not a sound. That's pretty strange for these dogs. They're pretty good sized dogs. So I kept walking. I get just past the house, and the house is to my left. So I'm in the middle of the road, and this huge growl just started roaring, just roar. I mean, just the loudest thing I've ever heard. And it was probably about 35 foot up in a tree, but it was just so loud. I've never experienced anything that loud, even at concerts. It just vibrated right through me, just right into me. It was very, very intense. Um, and I didn't exactly know what to do. I didn't, I didn't want to run. I just knew something would happen if I ran. So I decided just to keep walking, and I had to go down like a 50-foot embankment on the road. It's like a slow incline, and I'm walking down, and the growling stopped. And as I'm continuing to walk, I hear something about 30 or 40 yards to my left in the field. And it's a pretty open field, not a lot in that field. I could not see anything because it was so dark, but I could hear it.
Okay.
And I kept walking. I had to go about a half mile to get up to where the main road was. And this part of Arizona, there was no traffic at 2:30 in the morning. There's no cars, anything. Then I hear something on the right side of me, and you can hear the heavy step, but you can't see anything.
So, do you think there was one on both sides,
I think
or
there was more than one.
okay?
That or it somehow got around behind me or in front of me and traveled to the other side. I don't think so. So I kept walking. I had to go up a big incline, about the same 50 yards or so on an incline to get back up this other hill. And I kept hearing it to my right, not on my left anymore, but on the right. As I got closer toward the main road, I heard it on my right again. Now, the main road is Highway 260 in Arizona. It's a small, 2 to 4 lane road. It's not a big highway by any means. It has gotten bigger over the last 30 years, but not then. Um, so I turned left, heading toward my house, restaurant, and I could hear it behind the little post office on the other side of the road. Then I could hear it behind, as I'm traveling to my left, I could hear it behind these buildings, behind this little Blue Ridge Drive-In, it was called, like a little diner. And never got a glimpse of it, but I could hear it there.
Okay, what were you hearing? The footsteps or breathing or?
No, mainly footsteps, branch break. You could hear the movement, quick movement between the buildings. But then when I'd looked, if there was any light at all, I couldn't see it already.
Right.
By the time the sound hit me, it was already through the gap of the 2 buildings or 3 buildings over there. So I got back to my, basically an apartment my dad and I built behind our restaurant. And I got into my apartment. I didn't have anything. I had a .22 rifle. I throw about 10 shells in there. This isn't going to do anything.
Right.
And I'm thinking, do I wake up my dad? Do I call the Forest Service, the park ranger? I don't know what to do. I'm, pretty young kid. I didn't want to wake up my dad because it's 2:30 in the morning and 3 o'clock by then. And he's a Navy man. And he had, elephant gun and, huge shell type stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to wake up my dad at 2:33 in the morning. So pretty much stayed up the whole night that night. And it's first daylight, I go back out there. So I go back out to that road. I go down to where those trees are next to the house. And I walk out about 30 feet or 40 feet. And I see a tree with pine needles all along the bottom of halfway around this big pine tree. The pine needles were about, 5-6 inches deep. Were all pushed away around that tree. Halfway around that tree. That's something that I've never seen out in the woods. I've never seen any animal do that. I've never seen any reason for that. I didn't know what it was.
Sure.
Later, I kind of came to realize that maybe he was coming down the tree or she and was reaching for the ground, trying to feel it maybe. I don't know. But it was very uniform, like about a 6 or 7 inch width around the edge of the tree, about 5 or 6 inches deep of this pine needles were pushed away.
Okay. And so I was going to ask you, when you said that you initially heard the yell, the call.
Yeah.
You said it was 30 feet up into the trees. Now, are you talking about elevated into the trees or in the tree line?
I don't know. I mean, it was so loud, Curtis, right? It was so loud that it could have been standing on the ground.
Okay.
That's how loud it sounded. Like there could have been a creature 35 feet tall, which I don't believe there is, but it sure sounded that loud.
Yeah. Well,
and it scared the hell out of me.
I don't know that they get that tall, but of course,
power.
if there's a hill, there's an elevation, and they're up here, and they call out, they could project higher if you're in a lower spot. Follow me?
Yeah.
And the sound, I don't know for a fact that I've ever heard one. I saw one. It didn't make any sound.
Yeah.
And I'm glad. I would probably died of a heart attack right there at 16 years old, but
well, that was only my first experience too. So let me finish this one up.
Yeah, go ahead.
After I looked at that mark on the tree or, looking around that area, I decided to go through the field along next to the road where I had heard it the first time in that field. So I'm walking along and I see this mound of grass, probably about a 2 foot high, maybe, but it's about 25, 30 foot, long and about 8 or 10 feet wide. Like the farmer just dumped grass there over the years or from his field, whatever it was.
Okay.
And I'm walking up toward it and I see an imprint of a footprint probably about 4 or 5 feet into it. And there's one print. Then about 8 or 9 feet, about 8 feet past that was 2 footprints. Like it was moving across the field. It made the first step and sunk in and then landed on both feet to stop itself to see what it was going through, probably. That's my rationale later I figured out. So there was one print, and it was probably 15 to 18 inches long, and it sunk down in the grass about 7 to 10 inches, 7 or 8 inches probably,
Of course, this
and
is clippings, right?
dead clippings from years. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And like I say, so it sunk down in the first time when it landed with 1 foot, and then 2 feet, a little spread out a little bit, and they were huge, the prints. So I said, all right, that's interesting. And I'm looking down in the field up toward the top in the corner of the field, and there's, after you climb the hill like I was talking about, there's 2 trees that are up in the corner of that field. I'm walking up to them, and it's like they're both pine trees. Now, one pine tree is perfectly straight, nothing wrong with it. The other pine tree goes up about 5 feet and bends, and then goes up again and bends, and then goes up again and bends. And this is a pine tree.
Wow.
I've never seen that. And it must have taken years to have gotten those bends into a tree like this. It was very interesting. And I look up there, and I can see where something had been digging sap up by the top of that tree. And I'm 14, years old, so I climb up there. And this is that morning. So I climb up there. I'm climbing up this tree, probably about 30, 35 feet up. I'm on the last branch that'll support my weight, and I can't reach where it's digging. It was still about 3.5, 4 feet above where I could reach.
And how tall do you think you were at that
I was
time?
probably about 5'10" by then. I'm 6 foot now. And I could not reach it. And you could see fresh claw marks up there and the sap dripping out.
Wow.
Like I said, I've never seen a tree like that. Now, that was
Yeah.
quite bizarre, but pine sap might be something they use for wounds or who knows what.
Yeah. Who knows? And you said you're on the last limb that would hold you up.
Yeah,
Where would be the last limb that would hold up something that was 9 foot tall?
possibly the same branch.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah, because they
Because
got real small after that.
yeah.
And I couldn't, unless they held on to the tree stem itself, but they didn't
Well,
look like they hold on
if
to
it
it.
were below you some, that would have added to the height of this creature.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now the footprints you saw, were they the traditional Sasquatch looking footprints, 5, 6 toes? Or could you
From what
see?
I could tell in the grass,
Yeah.
but farther stories I'll tell you about, I
Okay.
have
Okay.
seen exact footprints in mud going into a lake. So that was a traumatic experience too. But that one I ran after when I heard it.
Oh no, 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 not me.
Yeah, and it was the exact same. I believe it was the same alpha male or creature that I had heard like a year before. It was the exact same sound, same pissed off growl, basically.
And,
So I say I didn't tell my dad about this experience then. I did tell him about farther ones that I had about the footprint and other things.
yeah.
But so that was the first experience. The second one I had, let me see. Okay. Second one would be by the creek. All right. I was about, I'd say, a half mile from that spot where I heard the first one. I was over toward the creek that goes into this lake. I was drinking a bottle of wine with a friend of mine. Okay. We had a bottle of wine, finished the wine. I told her that I was going to go on the other side of the creek because I'd never been over there to look for evidence. And she said, okay, be careful, call me later and make sure you're okay. All right, okay. So I said goodbye to her. I go over this little, like 1.5 foot wide little levee that goes across the creek, get to the other side, and I'm walking along the creek, and I see fresh breaks in one of the barbed wire strands. And it's about 25 feet away. So I'm walking up to it, and I I know what to look for. I've seen fresh breaks. You know when a stick has been freshly broken. It was
Sure.
all three strands had broken sticks in between them, still on there. Okay. And there's a clump of hair, probably about 3/4 of an inch around, clump of hair, with a blondish type hair, about 4 to 5 inches long, stuck on the top strand of the bob wire. Right as I get up close to that, all the hair on the back of my neck just stood up, and I could just feel I was being watched. So I spun around and dropped to the ground kind of like a spider, and I'm looking side to side, about 5 inches off the ground on my hands and feet, looking side to side, trying to see anything. And I didn't see anything, but I have that feeling. I know I'm being watched. So I slowly back up and kind of back out of the area, about 10 feet or so, 15 feet. And then I turn and I just walk out. And I'm walking out. I get to where that cement deep part is like 20 feet deep on the left side where the water is, and then water coming in from the right going over the top. I'm thinking, if it's down there, you can just grab me and I'd be gone. Because you can't see in that water.
Wow.
So that was kind of a scary moment. So I get back home, and it's already getting dark by the time I got there. So I brought a friend of mine out there the next morning. He and I went out there. We're walking around. We're getting up to it. Get to the same spot. The hair is gone. Okay.
Okay.
We're looking around. It's like, I don't see any prints because it's kind of a rocky area with a lot of ground cover, but a lot of pretty good sized rocks around the area. And my friend walks over to one of these rocks. It's probably about a 25, 30-pound rock, kind of a cone shape kind of rock. He lifts it up and tips it up, and there's bob wire underneath. Now, I can't think of any kind of creature that would put bob wire underneath the rock.
No.
Even hostage.
Okay. I can't. I can't hear you right now.
Oh,
Now I could hear that.
okay.
Yeah. There you
So
go.
my friend tips up, finds some bob wire, like twisted up, not like circled. It was kind of like just manually twisted up and put underneath the rock. And this is, like I say, I can't. There's no way a bear would do that or any animal, and a human would have no reason to do that.
No.
Even if they're replacing the fence post or bob wire, I say a human wouldn't do that. They'd either throw it back in their truck or car or whatever, or throw it in the creek.
Sure.
This is like a barbed wire that goes right down into the water so that people keep people out or animals out. But why would there be barbed wire underneath the rock unless it was trying to hide their blood or hair, something like that? That's what I figured the Bigfoot might be doing.
It very well could be. And I know listeners are going to ask this question. Were there any animals in this field? Horses, cows? Okay. And you've seen horsehair before.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And
Yeah, I
so,
found that, I did a lot of research after that point. I started getting samples of different hair from different horses, from any other animal I could. I started finding strands, though, of it was black hair where it had come out of the scalp. I say scalp because you could tell where it was started from. It was black for about 6 to 7 inches and then reddish for the other 5 to 6 inches. So most of this hair was so coarse, and it was totally different than the horse hair or any other hair that I had found, but it would change color. Half was black and then turned to reddish brown color. And I found a lot.
sense.
12 to 14 inches long, some short, but mainly there were the longer type hairs like that changed color from black to reddish brown.
But you still didn't see a creature at that point.
No.
Okay. But you did find the hair at this one, and you heard, you had the feeling that you're being watched.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
I have a good sixth sense, and I know basically what that is.
Yeah.
Just and there's nothing else you can explain to it.
No, there's,
When you saw yours, I'm sure the hair stood up on your neck.
yes.
And
And just telling the story makes my hair stand up still.
yeah,
But
even to me, it does too.
yeah.
And it was it was scary. I knew that something was watching me, and I didn't know where. Thinking back, it could have been in that tree that I was right under, but I didn't think of looking straight up. I was thinking more looking out, you know. But
So you believe these guys like to be in the trees, up in the trees.
I believe that's a great way for them to hide and blend in
Okay.
because
So
they are so strong that they could just, you know, basically like hop from one tree to another or use their long arms. You see orangutans and those kind of creatures, they'll pull a branches over and then they'll swing with the tree over to another one. I mean,
and that brings up a very interesting question. You hear people talking about seeing trees shaking here in the forest and then here, like it would be moving and shaking the trees.
yeah.
Maybe they are jumping from tree to tree. I
And I,
never thought about that. Never thought about it.
well, let me tell you about the next time I heard it,
Okay.
where I was talking about the field and those two trees. There's a little street that's right after that. So then it was like a dead end street. Now it's more developed at the other end. But my friend lived at the last house on the right of that street at that time, and it wasn't even paved, it was just gravel. So I'd been visiting him, and I decided to go for a walk out in the lake, toward the lake. So his dog was going with me, and she's part shepherd, part wolf dog. Her name was Wolfie, and her and I are walking toward the lake, and she was probably about 20 feet in front of me, and all of a sudden I hear the same growl creature just, and it was probably a quarter mile in front of me, and I could hear it just raising hell, just almost the exact sequence almost that I heard before. And it was really loud, and I could just tell there was something upsetting this. So the dog stopped in her tracks, looked back at me like, you know, because she lived right there. So she probably heard that a lot more often than I did.
Yeah.
She stopped in her tracks and looked back at me. Well, I took off running toward it fast as I could. And I kind of learned from some of the Indian tribes in the area in Arizona how to push off of rocks like starting blocks. So I'm running and looking for eye spots. I'm looking up in the trees, side to side, anywhere I can to see anything I get. So I got about a little over a quarter mile or so up past the trees. The tree line ends as you get about 50 yards from the lake. And I'm out of breath. So I'm like, okay, calm down. All right. So I looked to my right and I said, all right, I'm going to go at an angle to my right to the shore edge and walk along the shore edge back to the left. Now, the creek inlet was to my left, probably about a quarter mile, in that area to where the other experience with the barbed wire was. So I get up to the shore and I'm walking along, and this time I don't even remember where the dog was because it wasn't even on my mind. I don't know if she followed with me or didn't. I don't remember anymore. But as I'm walking, I see this mud sticking up about a little over a foot high on the edge of the lake. And I'm getting closer and closer, and it's about, I don't know, 6, 7 inches wide. And it's sticking up out of the level part of the mud over a foot high and curling back toward me. And I'm like, what is that? And it's like mud just sticking up out of the middle of the shore, the bank. And I'm walking, I'm walking, I'm walking. I get closer, and it's a footprint that's pushed down into the mud. Okay. It was just the front human type toes Bigfoot toes, just the first half of the foot. The back part was pushing all that mud up out of the ground, up above ground. It was sunk down about 8 inches deep, and it was had to have been 700-800 pounds easily. And then diving into the water. So there was one print going into the water. When it stepped, it sunk down about 8 inches. But with the mid-tarsal break, think of your foot like this.
Mm-hmm.
The opposite way, though. I can do that in the camera. So the back part of the foot was sticking straight up. The heel part basically was up in the air, and all that mud went right up that flat part of its foot, and then started curling over toward the back. Okay, toward the shore, toward the water. You could see clear as day 5 toes, and they were huge.
Wow.
I mean, anything that can sink 8 inches deep in the mud and not get stuck, for one, it's got to be pretty strong, but then dive right into the water from there. I say, I never heard it, because I was running up to the clearing. I never saw it. I didn't see it dive in the water, but I saw this print going into the water. And it just, I wasn't scared, but it was quite an experience to see that.
Yeah. So how far was that print from the water's edge?
From the water's edge, probably about 3 feet.
Okay.
And it was probably about 3 foot into the mud. Like I could step within 3 foot without sinking down myself much. But I didn't want to go any farther. I didn't want to get stuck and lose my shoe or something.
Yeah, I mean, these guys have, they're born with snowshoes for feet, so they can get through mud and everything.
Yep.
Wow. Be sure and tune in next week for the exciting conclusion of the interview with Glen. In the meantime, be sure and check out our merchandise page. And if you haven't already, be sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Tell your friends about us. All right? Y'all have a good night, and God bless you.